Hi guys, I wanted to make a brief video to outline what we had for the Farm Talks program where we are and a couple of questions that have come up as we're trying to solve it. So I've been going back a little bit with Ellen Schindel and Bonnie about how to frame some of the questions that are out there. And then so we have some questions that we need to think about and that you guys need to think about as far as how you see this major kind of coming together. So first thing I'm going to do is just introduce the proposal where it is on sale, and then we'll talk a little bit about the budget. That'll lead into questions about our curriculum and some of the courses within it, and how you guys think it's going to need to be staffed, how many students we're going to get, how many sections we think we can get. And then this is something like questions to ask in a survey. I have it as the last item on the list because I think I need some feedback from other programs that have done this before. To sort of get an idea of what they're looking for us to ask. But so let's kick it off with going into the introduction on sale. And if you go up under in sale, basically under your proposals, you should have access to a new program proposal for Farm Talks, and you can view that and then open it up, edit it, and then be able to see it. And so our prospectus has now been converted into a proposal, and then I've added some elements to this as well as I've been hacking away at it over the past couple of weeks. So I want to zoom down to, a lot of this is self-explanatory and things that we've talked about before, but go through it, please, and see what your thoughts are of any changes or elements that are weaker. I want to focus on our feasibility and the budget. This is the part that's going to be a real driver as far as whether it's a up or down on doing this kind of program, and help us figure out how we can shape it in a way that's actually really effective with our resources and helping us be able to also serve our students well and get the things done we want done. So they talk about in here about an Excel spreadsheet that I've included as an attachment, and basically what this Excel spreadsheet does is it helps us to set up and track some of the different elements that they think are really important, including CSSM, equipment fees, library resources, IT, marketing plan, and then the staffing that might be needed to actually be able to help this thing and keep this thing rolling. So a lot of these things, I've looked at a couple of them on sale before, and a lot of them are kind of warming up of other programs that already are existing. Ours is a bit unique in terms of proposing some of the different types of, hiring new faculty and also laboratory equipment. So we're going to appear like an outlier when we make these proposals, but hell with it. Let's do it. So here we are with Farm Talks. I've come up with a rough estimate of what we're going to be doing. I'm going to change the size on this a little bit just so we can kind of see what's going on. And on here I have basically what they call a full budget for Farm Talks, and a couple of other tabs here you can ignore that I have on there. And then what this does is that it outlines personnel and budget expenses related to the program and allows them to be able to say, okay, if you have X number of students who are being attracted to the program, then how many dollars can we expect to have come in? And this helps them balance their spreadsheets as they're looking at what to consider in this program and whether it's worth investing in. So I'm looking at this and trying to figure out, okay, so teaching load, for example, here is illustrated year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. So as we are rolling out this new program, how is it that it's actually being, how many teaching faculty do you need? And so what I've confirmed with them basically is that it refers to the number of faculty needed for an 18 credit year, meaning a full load of 9 credits, and then, how many faculty do you need? So I've estimated 1. It doesn't mean that that one faculty member is, like there's only one faculty member doing it, but it's the equivalent of one faculty member. So however the teaching loads are distributed, that's what we're going to, that's, what is on here now. And then perhaps that we would be recruiting adjunct faculty to help maybe like BMS 311 or cover some of the 291 classes that you guys typically teach or something along those lines. And then the estimate is like the number of students that are enrolled in the fall and the winter. So I was estimating maybe like PTX 312 would actually have 30 students in it, maybe 20 for the PTX major, and then 10 that would be coming in for the through BMS, it's just out of general interest. And then maybe in the winter that this might actually be, that there might be 20 students taking 2 new courses. And so I was asking if that's appropriate, and they thought it was. So this tracking in terms of how we've actually see the number of students who are actually going in and traveling through the program is the way that they want to basically see how the enrollment is going through in this typical type of program. So I've made these kinds of estimates based on what the different courses are that are running. So the first year, for example, I put in here, and I just kind of made this up. They thought it was a good idea, though, of basically saying, okay, in that first year we have PTX 312, one section that's going to be running 30 students. PTX in the winter we'd have PTX 433 running as one section there, and then PTX 443 running as one section there. Then in year 2, 312 would actually move over and would continue, and then we'd have 433 in the winter. We'd have this cluster running. And then we'd also have this sort of second year as of students and the next new courses of PTX 453, 63, and 495. And so the listing of the students that are engaged in there. And so those students are basically the 20 that started off in year 1 over here, and then now are flowing through into this section here. And then this is our new crop that's kind of flowing in, and so on. So I'm seeing a pipeline of basically about 20 students going through there, at least given the number of sections and I think the staffing that we have. But that's a guess on my end, and so I kind of wanted to get a feel from you guys of what you thought in terms of capacity and number of students that you could have. Like, for example, can you have 20 students in your PDPK lab? Is that too many students to take on there? And if it is, then maybe we need to shrink the pipeline of students coming in or add a section or something along those lines of, and thinking about that kind of strategy. So that's the kind of outline of this. Another key thing, and I've kind of highlighted a couple of things here, is this instructional technology. What types of equipment are we going to need? I just put 200,000 in there as a number. I don't really know what we need for those different courses that we're looking at, but those are key elements that we need to be able to address. And in there, I think also be sure that you're addressing maintenance issues. So, you know, do you need like service agreements in order to be able to help maintain the equipment? Or are you going to buy this really expensive thing and then not be able to afford having this support for it that comes down the line? So I think those are light items that can come up and questions that can come up with the institutional technology and a resource-heavy type of thing that we're looking at here. And so I've basically put in some notes along here about what the instrumentation would be, how much would it cost, service agreements, etc. MRI is just a program that's run through the NSF major resource instrumentation that we've used to get some equipment before. It's touch and go sometimes getting it, but just something to think about. And then what do we need for CSSM in terms of being able to have the types of disposables and other types of materials that we might need on an ongoing basis to help support the instruction of the students as we move through the different types of curriculum over the different years. So that's what we're looking at and in terms of the Farm Talks budget. This connects to a couple of questions that we have. So another spreadsheet that I've attached basically is thinking about, well, what courses are we going to be running through on our major? And so as you look through it, I've basically put the different comparables or other model programs here and then come up with an estimated total number of credits that are within the major and how it's going to be structured. I just want you guys to take a look at this to make sure that it actually fits. For example, 208, really? Should we have 208? Maybe that's something that we should revisit, and it might be something that we need to address as a department. Perhaps that's a class that could be removed as a prerequisite for 290, and instead we have them joining 290 without it. It's a question. I'm kind of in favor of keeping it in there, but at the same time, you know, that's not necessary. Micro, for example, I've also moved into an elective rather than having it be part of the major, which is different than the BMS major itself. So there's a couple of elements there that I've kind of taken and moved out of there, and then I've listed our different courses here. I think as we look at these different models and like the different lab courses that are involved in it, you know, I've structured it around these two different labs, and we've got these other model systems that are out there. I think that will pass the muster. You can take a look at it, see if it's convincing to you, put on your most critical hat on it, and then see if there's ways that we can help and bolster the arguments that we need for it. But this curricular analysis sheet will be something that we'll need to submit along with everything else. So just so that they have an idea of what everybody else is doing. All right, so that's that piece. Let's take a look then and see what we've talked about. So we've talked about the budget. We talked about the curriculum courses that are within it. now we got to think about staffing and how many students and how many sections we're going to be running into. And these are questions that came up in the budget sheet, but we can also see and think about when we're looking at how our courses are structured. So in here, for example, as we look at this prospectus that we have here, and we're looking at the number of faculty that are going to be running through these and running these different classes here, how are we going to staff this? How is your workload going to shift than what you had before? And I'm thinking, just from what I could tell, is that you guys have been teaching 291, so we get that off your docket. And then if you have a 311 that you need to be, I think you guys typically teach one 311 a semester. So you may keep that going, but if you don't, do we hire, an affiliate or an adjunct or something to be able to try to teach that? How does that work with what 311 requires and what we have available to help us sort that out? If we go back to the to SAIL here, what we can do is be able to look at it's back in here. So trying to be fast with this. And darn. I think what I got to point back to, sorry for the delay, but probably you needed a little break from my ranting, is I figure it's a video, you can come back to it. But it's thinking about how this kind of flow through works and just making sure that the staffing fits within this. How many faculty do we need to go into and teach these different courses that we'd be offering? And if we look back at here, I think this is probably the place that I was sort of looking for, was basically how is it that your fall and your winter is going to be broken up, and who's going to be teaching what. So that's what we're looking at in terms of these different types of programs. So think about how many students are going to be in there as well. I mentioned this before, but kind of get back into that and think, like, how many students can you fit in 312 and 433, etc. So, okay, so how many sections, how many students? The last part is questions to ask in a survey. So I gave that sort of an asterisk in my presentation to you guys. It's something to think about as we're looking at, but I think we've got some other bigger ones to kind of dig at. But just so you have an idea of what we're thinking about, number of students expect to enroll in the program, and then evidence that we can attract new students in there. If you have thoughts about that, that would be great. And then thinking about the other ways that we can actually help to generate revenue that the institution may gain. So this is actually something that I did. I was doing sort of when I was at neuroscience, the last neuroscience meeting, I was asking about our program for PTX because I was thinking that maybe there's ways that we could help support developing some of the lab courses there. And so this is summarized there as far as some of the options, but you guys might know of some in either pharm or in toxicology that might actually be better, or additional examples that you can add in there. This thing, what do we do if we only have 75 to 50% of our students enrolled? I think that's something I'm going to ask around to see how people have managed that question before. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. If new faculty are needed, provide a brief description of the area of specialty. So we've talked about that before, and I summarized it in a section up above. I'm not going to dig for it, but there's another section where we've talked about it. But we're looking for somebody who can be able to cover some of those elements that we need, and then this idea of faculty workloads. That's part of the reason I was asking you about those adjustments that you're thinking about, because we need to think like about 291, for example, and so on. This question here, as far as the new program, I'll dig into and see what I can figure out about that. As far as existing courses, like what do they mean? As far as what do they need for that. And part of that is the idea of like, if you have, wow, 20 new students coming in from outside, totally new recruitment of new students into GVSU, can we handle them in the courses that we have? And I think that's pretty easy to argue for these large section courses like Chem, et cetera. And then creating collaborations, if you have thoughts of that, like chemistry is obviously one, but there's others that we need to kind of cough up there. New space resources, we talked about that in the budget. We need to really think about that and be able to have a plan for that, and how that would work. And I'm particularly thinking about the instrumentation that you need. So we need to, there can't be any surprises here. We can't have it be like, oh yeah, we've got it for this, and then we have to find like a whole new piece of equipment down the road. We won't. We'll just have a huge problem if that happens. So we really need to think about what we really need to get this to work, and because coming back later and asking for more, we may not get it, and then we'd be in a really a big problem. So go through those different questions. The takeaway then that I'm going to ask you guys to think about for our next meeting is, thinking about and centering on that budget piece. I think that spreadsheet really helps us frame our conversation. What do you need for instructional technology? What do you need for staffing? And how do you see this rolling out in terms of enrollment? So a lot there that's being introduced. I hope the video is helpful in terms of kind of bringing these different elements together. Let's plan on setting up a meeting in about a week or so, after you've had a chance to kind of think this through. I'll send out a doodle poll and see what the availability is. All right, thanks guys.